Invent India is basically a design studio which combines imagination with reality, and we work on innovation, delivering state-of-art products through our product design studio in Ahmedabad. I'm honored and humbled to be a part of such an event where academia largely is directly involved in the industry to understand the product development, especially in IoT, which itself is an emerging thing. Topic for the lecture is basically certification and testing, and to explain the certification requirements precisely, I'll start with NPD process or new product development process in the industry processes, and later on we'll walk through the standards, and then we'll jump on to the certifications. So when you talk about new product development, a product is developed into several phases. When a product is developed, there are total 8 phases which it is ought to go through. Now, these 8 phases, they might be slightly different according to different organizations, but these are ought to be taken in with regards to a successful product in the market launch. Phase 0, which we call the initial phase, is the phase which is mainly dependent on the requirement analysis of the market for the product to be developed. Now, suppose if you are developing an MCB or PLC, which is IoT enabled, that time you'll need to see what is the requirement according to your market. Especially when we talk about the US market or European market, then what is the voltage range, what are the products which are already available in the market, what is the demand, everything needs to be considered. And in phase 1, we deal with what are the applicable certifications which will be required. So for say industries, 508 will be required, and for medical devices, 60601 will be required. I'll come to it later. These are just numbers given to those certifications and standards, just as roll numbers given to the students. Return on investment, ROI, and features specifications with applicable standard certifications. These are few things which are to be declared before the concept development. So if you are developing a concept, that time you need to know all these things so that you don't miss out any of the things. And according to it, the risk analysis is to be done. So if your requirement is IP rated, IP67, IP68, that time you have to see what is the risk in manufacturing, what is the risk in designing, and hence the concept is developed accordingly. Phase 3 comes in the designing. At this stage, the designing, actual work of designing starts. And then the prototype is built, the testing on the prototype is done, the initial firmware, software integration, the electronics, hardware, the mechanical fitments, all these things are tested in this design and prototype thing. Now the phase 4 comes in when the successful designing and prototyping is completed, wherein you manufacture a certain lot, the first lot is manufactured, pilot production is taken out, and this pilot production is now tested, which is ready for mass production, but for certification, you require this pilot production. And on this pilot production, you do the certification and testing. Once you get those certification, you launch the product. If it's a well-set company like L&T Tech Services, or L&T Tech Services is basically a technical services organization, L&T to be precise, L&T or Siemens or Allen Bradley or Rockwell, such companies, they don't require a Kickstarter campaign. Their market is already set. But companies which are startups, they require funding from outside. So Kickstarter campaign is done just after this certification. It can be done in parallel to this certification as well, wherein the official announcement of the product is done. Phase 7 comes with the mass production, wherein the mass production is done after gaining the capital which is required for the production. These are the steps when a new product is to be developed. These steps may not be in 8 phases, they may be in 5 phases, they may be in 12 phases in some of the organizations, but the sequence, if you observe, it's the same. Now, why I'm starting with this and now I'm jumping on to standards is, if you see certification wise this particular slide, you see no error in this. But when you minutely observe, I have not written return on investment clearly as I wrote market study. MRS I have written, but along with it, market research study is also written. Whereas ROI is directly written as ROI, which is return on investment. So I have not followed a particular standard. It is through, but it is through the certification or testing or examination, whatever you call, but it's not following a proper standard. There is one more mistake. Can anyone just ping that mistake down in the chat box? Okay. Uh, there is another thing. If you see this and just after ROI, and is written typed in alphabets, whereas in phase 2, concept development, and is with a symbol of and. This is another mistake which I purposely did so that I can tell you the difference between the standards and the certification. Certification is basically an examination which is carried on to your product, whereas standard is a process which is followed to gain a proper output. You all might have seen these types of sockets. They are present all over the globe. So if a plug which goes in the US socket won't go in the Indian socket, you will need an adapter. To have this, we have a standard made in ISI, which is Indian Standards Institute. They only follow a certain type of socket in which the plug goes. So different geographical locations have different standards. Along with these types of plugs, there are many changes, like when you talk about voltage levels, the voltage levels in USA, they are 120 volts, whereas we have 230 volts. This is a major difference. When developing a product, basically electronics or electrical, that time you see electronic voltages, they play a huge role. When developing an IoT product, that time also you will have to convert these voltages into usable voltage for your controller or for your antenna or for your transmitter. That time you'll need to see what voltage levels you are targeting, what is your target, which is done in the MRS or the market study. Now, what are standards? Can someone just name few of the standards they know apart from the ones listed in this Excel file or the presentation? Correct. IEEE is one of the standards which is widely followed especially for things like Wi-Fi or wireless networking. So for Wi-Fi, we use IEEE 802.11, and now 802.15 is coming up, which will be widely used. This is one of the best standards coming up soon. So a standard is repeatable, harmonized, agreed document of way of doing something. It's a process. It's not compulsory to follow the same process, but it gives you a way to formulate something. Think of them as formula that describes the best way of doing something which is proven in the market. It could be about making a product, managing a process, delivering a service, or supplying materials. Standards, they cover huge range of activities. For an instance, quality management standards are there, environmental management standards are there, health and safety management standards are there, energy management standards are there, food safety standards are there, like FSSAI, IT security standards are there. There are many types of standards which are already present. Now, who creates these standards? We are talking about standards so much. Who creates them? Who are the stakeholders of these standards? Basically, the government bodies, consumer bodies which are present, and the industrial bodies. They all come together to create a particular standard. So if I talk about UL 508, which is for industrial purpose, there you have a particular standard. They follow a particular standard which gives a very in-depth knowledge about the usability, the applicable geographical location, and the final use of that particular product in any of the location which is there. So for say, if a product is to be used in USA and India both, you are developing an IoT product which is to be used in USA as well as India. For that, you might opt for a voltage range of 85 to 265 volts AC as input voltage or supply voltage for that particular device. That time, it is very important to know the market, which the study you have already done. And this will help you get your product in the US market as well as Indian market. And hence, the standards are important to know before your product development. How they are created. Basically, it's the idea which is turned into a project which follows through the approval process. The standard is developed based on it. The stakeholders or the sponsors, they vote for it, and then the standards board approve it, and it is published. In any of the scenario, if this fails, then the standard is revised or withdrawal. The withdrawal standards you can see on the archives in the respective website. So ISO has its own website, UL has its own website, CE has its own, CCC, which is in China, that is also having its own website. ISI is having its own website. We'll talk about these. If time permits, I'll take you through IC 60601, which is for medical devices. We'll walk through it, and if we get more time, we'll go in depth of that particular document. The document is old. I cannot share legally. I cannot share the document with you all. That's the reason why I have the old version of that document, which was in archive, and I can share with you guys the details of that particular document. What details are given, how much in-depth knowledge which is present in that particular document, which can be used. Most of the participants today are professors. So to your students when they make their own projects. If they keep these minute things in mind, definitely it's going to help them in the long run. Now, how standards help? As said earlier, they increase global tradability. A product which is developed for India can also be used in USA as it is without any modification. Otherwise, you will have to change the transformer or components inside that particular device so that it works in USA. It's easy to get certificate. Certificate is the result of that particular certification test or exam, and it's one of the best way or important way of protecting your customer. Once your customer knows that your product is certified, it's following a particular standard, then it gains their goodwill, it gains their confidence in your product. This is how standards help you in getting your product in a good start. Now, the most common standards that are used in industry. For USA, we use UL, which is also known as Underwriters Laboratory Standards. This Laboratory Standard is certifying various sections or various laboratories across the globe. India is also having few of its laboratories wherein you can go test your product according to that particular standard. ISO, which is International Standards Organization, they also have the same laboratories across the world. CE, which is Confirmed European, which is for European Union. And if you want to have your product in the European market, then you have to have this particular standard in place so that you can get your product through, and the users, the end users or the customers, they believe in your product. Indian, we have ISI. Many of you know ISI. In advertise, especially gold advertise, you might have seen ISI mark. That ISI mark is by Indian Standard Institute. So finally, introduction to the standards, the process. We know. We know our market. Say our market is USA. For your IoT product, your market is USA. What certification it requires? Will go through a medical device product, for example, or as a case, maybe an ECG device, which can measure the ECG of a patient. Then, how the certification process? You have followed the particular standard 60601. You have designed your product according to it. You have named the specifications. You have given the IP rating, everything you have given and mentioned. The voltage levels it works on, everything is given. Now the testing is to be carried out. How this testing is to be done? Till now, if there is any ambiguity or any doubts, please post it in the chat box, because now the documentation part, the standard processes which we have followed till now, and the testing will start. Please let me know if there is any doubt or the speed is not too fast or not too slow. You can write your doubts in the chat box. Okay, let's move ahead. I know it's late afternoon and you all might have just got your dinner or lunch done. So, नींद आने वाला factor is very common. I'm sure you all might be awake and we are good to go with standards. Now the certification part. What is certificate? Certificate is the proof that tells you that this particular product is working under the conditions it is mentioned. If there is a medical device which is to be used, it is certified. That means it can be used in any of the situations given in the manual of that particular device. Example, if the device says it's IP rated, you can work with it underwater as well. But if the device fails underwater, then that product is to be replaced by the company. And the standards organization, they take action on it because a certification is done. And if the certification is done and the standard is followed, then it's the issue with the manufacturing or assembly. So they have this small gasket in between to protect the ingress of water molecules, which protects the internal circuitry, and hence the IP rating is very important. Certification is the action or process of providing someone or something with an official document attesting to a status or level of achievement. It's just like your result of examination. Once you give your examination, once the testing is done, that time you get a certificate or result. This certification is the same result of that particular testing. Now, why do we need this particular certificate? The purpose of the certificate is to demonstrate that the specific requirements are met. The requirements you say are met. If you say your device is capacitive touch enabled, it's having dual touch, then it should work with that particular specification. If they say it lasts for 8 hours of ideal state, it should last for 8 hours of ideal state when it starts working, when you buy the product. And in case of batteries, they always say that this product battery life will degrade after so and so cycles or so and so years or time. You all might have seen speakers which are there present in the market. They all give this value: 3-watt speaker, 50-watt speaker, 500-watt speaker. They always give this wattage. This is the power consumption of that particular speaker. But they never say that this speaker will work till the range of 20 meters, till the range of 30 meters, till the range of 40 meters. Because in certification testing, they will definitely fail in such conditions. They are tend to fail. So to be on a safer side, they never say that this speaker will give you noise or give you sound till this particular range. Whereas in case of IoT, the antennas, they are required to work till a particular stage, till a particular range. So they'll always provide you data wherein you will say BLE will work till 28 meters in a straight line of sight, where you have no hindrance in between. Then the calculation part comes in, that if you have a concrete wall of 7-inch or a brick wall of 7-inch, what will happen? Then the calculation part comes in. Based on your antenna, that calculation is done. But before that, you need to specify in a free space with no hindrance in a straight line of sight. This strength antenna gives you a range of this much meters. So BLE 5.0, it works till 28 meters straight line of sight without any hindrance in between. These are few things which are important when we go for certification, and this makes your product a very good in the eyes of your customers. So if you are using a Bluetooth device, say headphones, they work till a range of 10 meters. The box says it works till the range of 10 meters. They work on Bluetooth 4.0. So the 4.0 is having this much range. As soon as some hindrance comes in, that 10 meters is no longer valid, because in the certification itself it is written that it is working 10 meters in a straight line of sight. These are few things which we need to take care when we go for certification. Now, what is certification testing? It's an examination of your product. If you say your product will last for 8 hours of battery life, it should last for 8 hours of battery life when the new battery is placed. Over the time battery decays, you have to give the decay value as well. So you get this decay value from the battery manufacturer, and this battery manufacturer gives you a decay curve of your battery. So over the time, after so many charge cycles, your battery will degrade by so and so value. So if you have 21700 battery with 500 mAh capacity, maybe 3C, so that time this battery should last for 2 years, and this is given by the battery manufacturers. You all are designers. As a design engineer, you never think of designing a product from scratch. You won't be manufacturing battery by yourself. You won't be manufacturing ICs by yourself. So you get a standard battery from the market with this, which is off the shelf, and you work with it. This is how things work in industry, and this is what we take from the manufacturers. How certification helps you or your product. Certification always proves assurance to your usability. If I have my headphones and they say if this headphone lasts for 5 hours after charging, they should last for 5 hours of charging, otherwise it's not usable. And this is highly related to IoT devices. Now IoT is emerging, and hence these things, they have a very big impact on such devices. The biggest example I can give you is of Siemens. If you see Siemens, the connectivity to Siemens product is through Profinet. If you see, Profibus is itself a standard or a protocol which is used by Siemens widely for their own products, and it's intellectual property of Siemens. Whereas companies like Rockwell, Allen Bradley, Mitsubishi, then Schneider, they don't use Profinet. They'll never use Profinet because it's IP of someone else, and also they'll have to pay royalty on that particular communication protocol or the standard. So they use open source standard which is Modbus. This standards helps them to communicate with each other. Every other device, if you try to communicate between Mitsubishi and Schneider, you can. But if you try to communicate between Mitsubishi and Siemens product, you won't be able to communicate. The protocols they follow are different. The standards they follow are different. It's just like the socket and the plug example which I gave you earlier. So if you are having the Indian plug and the socket is of US, you won't be able to plug that in, right? So this is a major difference when you talk about standards. You have to follow a particular standard. And in IoT, the more you keep yourself open sourced, more is your adaptability with other things. If we talk about IoT, we are trying to communicate refrigerator with electricity, with stove, with AC, with exhaust fan, with ceiling fan, with lights, every other device in your house or in the industry. You're trying to communicate with each other. So in this particular case, if you have a Siemens product, I'm not defaming Siemens. Siemens has a wide range. They all are very compatible with each other. And once you have that system in place, it's very robust and very well tested. But you won't be able to introduce another company's product into that particular series because it's following some other protocol, it's following some other standards. And this is where the standards plays a huge role in certification. It follows a particular path, it tests, it proves itself, but it's not a standard. Now talking about Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is widely used. Every company, right from Siemens, Schneider, Allen Bradley, L&T, Mitsubishi, Mitachi, sorry, every company is having Wi-Fi. They all work at 2.4 gigahertz. Now in 802.15, they all are working at 5 gigahertz so that they can improve the speed. This testing is done, and this testing then helps in certification, and the certification proves and assures the user about the usability. Okay, fine, this works in Wi-Fi. They are saying that this is Wi-Fi, the latest Wi-Fi, it's following 802.15. This will work. In case of Bluetooth, it's not following Bluetooth 2.0, it's following Bluetooth 5.0. Definitely, it's having more speed, it's having more range. This is proven, this is certified, hence we use it. It's just like buying gold. If you buy a gold piece or gold ornament of ISI mark, you know, you are assured that this is a certified product. It is 99.99% pure. This is why standards help in certification, and certification helps your product to sell out in the market. Uh, this was it with respect to the presentation. Now, do we have any doubts on it? Okay, I have few things. Is any role present between standards and certificate? Yes. Standards, they define what tests will be done on your particular product. So if you are developing an ECG machine, then the standards will tell you what precautions you need to test and what tests will you need to follow in your design and what tests will be carried out for this particular certification. So if you are launching an ECG product in USA market, you will need UL 60601. For in that UL 60601 standard, you will be given the set of rules to be followed in designing. While designing, if you take care of those particular rules, it's easier to get the certification because this is a standards are proven things which are done. We have another query. I've developed Wi-Fi enabled pulse oximeter. How do I get certificate and standard for medical device? That's pretty relevant now. Uh, one, please see your market first. If your market is India, you have to see ISO 60601/1 standard. Also, for charging your pulse oximeter, if it is rechargeable, then you need to see the charging status as well, because for 60601 above 15 watt they do the certification testing. Below 15 watt they won't carry out a certification test for it. The heating and the temperature rise things will not be carried out while charging. Hence, you will have that particular freedom in your device. All those things I'll cover up in the coming document. I'll be sharing my screen again with the document of 60601, which is of 2005 release, so that we can see what tests the certification committee will be taking out. Do we have any other query? Contact details. You can please take it from the slides. I'll share the slides with Praveen sir. Okay, these are my contact details. You can take a snap of it. Please let me know once you are done so that we can go ahead for the document work.
I request all the participants, please note down the email ID of our expert so that in future if you need any help regarding the testing and certification of product, you can contact him.
One more thing, I'm not into the testing body or the certification body, so I won't be helping out in getting your product through the certification test. But yes, I can definitely help you out in knowing what are the certificates required for that particular standard. I'll also show how we see this particular certification requirements. I have UL standards open. I'll share my screen again. So can you please confirm if my screen is visible again?
Yes, it is visible.
Sure. So this is Underwriters Laboratory Standards sales site. You have to purchase the standards, and this is the reason why I'm not able to show you the particular standard directly, because you have to purchase it, and my company has purchased it. So this standard is for industrial control panels, as you can see. This is 508A, and this is applicable only for the panels, not for the devices inside it. So while designing a panel, if you have DIN rail mounted inside, it is connected to Ethernet, and that Ethernet is going inside a router, which is then transmitting it wirelessly, which is IoT application. Then it's not applicable for this particular panel standards, but the panel itself should follow this particular standard, because this is going to be tested against, your panel is going to be tested against 508A. Whereas if you browse through the standards, you have too many different standards available for different purposes. So for audio or video information communication technology equipment, you follow 62368/1. For software cybersecurity, 2900/2. And if you don't know about the names, what are the names associated with it, you just need to type in, say, medical, and you get the relevant standards applicable for your medical device. And as you can see, there is a huge range. You have to select what are applicable for your particular device. So standard for refrigerated medical equipment will not be applicable for ECG or oximeter. Hence, this is not useful for you. But if I know that it's oximeter, okay, let's see the keywords. This particular medical equipment is required. This standard is required to be followed, and this standard itself tells you what are the certification tests. So this is the document for IEC 60601, which I have opened. This tells you the introduction, the wire construction, the amount of overlap and clearance and creepage in your particular device, your PCB layout, what will be the tests, at what temperatures they will be testing it. If you say it will work at nominal room temperature, then it will be working for 15 to 35 uh, degrees Celsius. If you say it can be used for higher temperature range, then a 50 degrees Celsius temperature range will be carried out. And at 50 degrees Celsius, this is a very prominent finding which I also had when I was doing a test on welding machine. Above 40 degrees Celsius, the calibration changes. And this is the reason why people do test and people get certified, so that the customer has the assurance, okay, this is tested above 50 degrees, at 50 degrees Celsius as well. In India I can use it because maximum temperature outside goes till 50 degrees Celsius. This product is tested at 50 degrees Celsius, not at room temperature. If you see laboratory equipments, they are largely kept in ACs. Reason is they are to be used at room temperature, they are not to be used outside environment. The relative humidity inside a room is very low with respect to the outside humidity which you have. So if a product designed and developed in, say, Shegao, it may not be useful in Mumbai just because the humidity in Mumbai is too much for that product. Hence, the design has to be considered in that particular case, and the requirement specification sheet should tell you exactly where this product is going to be used and what are the requirements. What is the humidity range, or what is the temperature range, or what is the vibration range it will be in. I'll zoom this document. So you have the test types, dielectric strength. For wires, you have flexibility and adherence, heat shock, sudden rise in temperature, retention of electric strength. These are few of the general tests, routine test or peak test, sampling tests. These are few of the general tests which gets carried out. I'll go to the introductory part of this particular document. This is a very big document of around 400 pages. This is IC 60601 of 2012 and 3.1 edition. This gets updated every 10 years. So if you see, they tell you everything regarding a medical device, may it be X-ray, may it be anything. If your device is ECG, here's the clearance and creepage part I was talking about earlier. The clearance distance, the creepage distance, the air clearance, the mechanical conditions, how the mechanicals should be there. It also tells you the notations or the symbols you need to have on your device. So if I take you directly on the indications, simply search it. So this table D, this tells you the indications you need to have on your device, and it also gives you the reference standard for it, from where the symbol has been taken. So if your device works on DC, it should follow this particular standard. This will be tested against the tests which are given in this particular standard, and the dielectric current will be tested against it. Direct current will be tested against it. What's the class of your device has to be mentioned. The caution, the process, everything is given in this particular standard document which is available. The only thing is when you develop a product, you have to buy this particular standard and then go for certification testing. All the indications you can see are present in this particular document, which are applicable on that particular device. Till now, do we have any doubts? Okay, no doubts till now. Well, go to our case study, which is for ECG monitoring. And this should be applicable for the oximeter we had doubt on. So in the IC 60601/1, you can see they have given one ECG monitoring case wherein the ECG of patient is to be monitored. So ECG needles, they penetrate inside the body many a times. If you see the old ECG devices, they used to touch to the skin of the patient. This touch of the skin is also to be tested. They should not give too much voltage to give shock in that particular area or the flow of current in that particular area. So the two terminals which are there for the ECG monitoring, they should not give a patient shock, or current should not flow from that particular path, a very high current, as per the beyond the rated current. All the details of how the equipment should be there, what monitor should include, patient leads, what they should be, how they should be, the sticky patch which is there, how it should be. Everything you will find is available in this particular document. Now, when we talk about X-ray systems, then X-rays, they are also covered in this particular document. All types of medical equipments and measurement equipments are covered, and if there are few of the medical devices which are not covered in this particular document, they are covered in other applicable standard document. So if you see the examples of essential performance, this performance test is carried out by the certification body. The ability of electrocardiograph or monitor to recover from the effect of discharge of defibrillator, where the failure to recover could lead to incorrect response by the medical staff. And this is unacceptable risk to the patient. So risk management is also an important factor, which we discussed in this particular slide in the beginning of the standards, in one of the phases. So phase 2 in the product development consisted of this risk analysis. This analysis should be done before the designing, actual designing. I cannot share you this document. You can get it online. If you create an account on UL website, I'm sharing with you all. You can search for 60601 You can create your account for free. You can browse through and see the document, but you won't be able to download it. To download it, you will need to pay. So I've sent the link for UL in the chat box. I'll show you different bodies which are there, or the list of different standards which are there. So IEC, as said earlier, International Electrotechnical Commission, ISO, International Standard Organization for Standards, AHAM, which is AHAM, which is Association of Home Appliances and Manufacturers, AMCA, Air Movement and Control Association International, AWS, American Welding Society, IES, Illuminating Engineering Society. There are a number of different societies. Also, if you see, there are many standards which are very widely used in the market, especially NEMA. If you go to any US based company, they know about it, NEMA. Even Indian companies which follow NEMA standards, they have a huge market in US. The NEMA standards, they affect a total revenue of $120 billion worth of just US state domestic products. So you can see the effect of this particular standard association on the US market. The acronym NEMA is abbreviated as National Electrical Manufacturers Association, and mostly NEMA motors are widely used because of their high performance. For petroleum, American Petroleum Institute.
Pratikji, have you shared the presentation or slide?
I'll share the presentation with you. Yes.
No, right now, are you presented any screen?
No, right now I'm not presenting any screen.
Okay.
I'll present it and also share the link of information from where you can get information about different standards applicable to different geographical location. So in India, it's ISI. In US, it's UL. In China, it's CCC. It's CE in Europe. So every other country, they have different standards. So it's very difficult to know what standards are applicable. Hence, these websites, they help out in knowing what is the applicable standards. ISO is a very general kind of institute which governs standards for around 162 countries. And IEC also governs around 150 countries. So it's very easy and handy. If you follow these two standards in your design, then they might work for maximum of the countries which you are targeting. So these are few of the standard associations which create these standards. If you see, IEEE is also one of the institutes. And Underwriters Laboratory, which I said earlier. So are we good till now, or Do you want me to visit any of the topic which you want me to elaborate? BIS is widely used for batteries, and without BIS certificate, you won't be able to uh, import any battery, uh, any product which includes battery needs to have this BIS certificate. It's Bureau of Indian Standards, which governs, which is under the umbrella of Indian Ministry of Consumer Product, Food and Public Distribution. So any battery which is coming from, say, China need to have this BIS certification along with it. Yes, it is possible to sell a product without certification in India, but if that product fails and if any mishap happens due to that product, no one you can blame for that particular product. And hence, the trust of consumer is not on the product which is not certified. If you are a person staying in India, you can always do jugaad and use it, but you cannot sell it out in the market openly, and you cannot ship it to any of the foreign country. If you are developing it in India and using it in India, then it's fine, but you cannot sell it widely. You need to have the certification tests done, because if you see some of the products or some of the heavy engineering products, they can affect human life as well, and they don't just affect human life of the user or the developer, but also others. If there is a car or there is a mobile phone which is developed in India, it needs to follow a certain set of rules and standards, and it needs to have a certificate so that it can work on that particular frequency. If you don't follow it and some mishap happens, then it's the liability of that particular company. If you remember, a few years back, Samsung had its problem. They recalled a particular series of their phones because it used to blast or get overheated. This is the gap in that particular testing, which they later found out, and Samsung paid a huge amount for it and also suffered a loss. So it's possible to sell a product without certification, but if you have a certification, then you have the trust, and companies, they always want to have trust. You can sell one or two product. You won't call it selling your product in the Indian market. Plastic products are highly uncertified products which are used throughout the Indian market. Even jewelry, you see, most of the jewelries, they are not certified, but still people trust the jeweler or the shop owner, hence they buy it. But in case of any mishap or any kind of dispute, customer cannot blame the manufacturer or the seller. ROHS, nice. ROHS is compliance certificate, which is mostly used by CSA and EU. So European Union, they have this ROHS in place which debars use of harmful elements like lead, and it restricts the overuse of such harmful elements in their product. So earlier electronics products used to have a large amount of lead. You all must be knowing more about it. So this use of lead is restricted. The use of lead, mercury, such types of elements, they can create miracle, but their overuse, they are carcinogenic. Hence, many of the countries, they have restricted the use of such elements through ROHS standards. Also, the decomposition of this particular minerals is a pain in heads of government. Hence, they push non-ROHS or components which are not compliant with ROHS away from their countries. If you see the abbreviation, if you extend the abbreviation, it itself says restriction of certain hazardous substances, which restricts the use of hazardous substances in the electronics. Now, whenever you go for certification, once you are done with your certification testing, your product successfully passes, you need to put that certification logo on your product to tell the user that fine, my product is UL certified, my product is CE certified. And this is the reason why you see this ISI mark on the gold or ISI mark on the fans or TVs which you get. If you flip your phone, MI phones, mostly they have this BIS logo on them. This is the certification mark which says that this product is certified according to the Bureau of Indian Standards. So the IMEI number, unique IMEI number, the slots, the capacity, the touch, everything is tested, and the battery life, the overheating. If you have, say, charger of 50 watt for the small uh, phone, then it heats. What is the maximum heat uh, it it can go to? These things are tested in such standards. We have another question: why every Wi-Fi and Bluetooth or mobile device has FCC and CE logo? CE is just a standard which is compliance to the European Union or the region of that particular certificate. It is compliant to that particular area, and FCC is another body which does this testing and gives a unique ID for your product. So, Federal Communications Commission is the body which tests your product. It's US governing agency which also tests product for various different countries. If I'll quickly show you a few of the documents which you need to keep in place when you go for certification. So this is the CE certification test report. It has its reference number, the compliance authority, and the reviewer's authority, and the issue date for the manufacturer and the device. It is for medical LCD monitor. And this is the certificate given by the body to that particular company. This is the certificate of compliance, which says that this is tested and is in compliance with these particular standards. This is the IEC 60601/1 document which they have uploaded along with their other documents, and it's a pretty big document, around 400 pages. So the compliance of that particular document is given, the report, the date of issue, and the total number of pages, and the signatory. So if you see, they have given the voltage ratings as well. So it's 110 to 240 volts. So it can work in India as well as in US. And the LCD monitor input rating is 12 volt, and maximum it can take is 5.83 amperes. If you see, even they have given the frequencies of operation. The standards which are applicable, again 60601. The RM report. This tells you what all tests are done, risk analysis which is done, who was the responsible person for it, and all these documents are necessary for future. So if your product comes into danger, if you have said that our product is not compliant with IP67, but the user uses it underwater and then complains that this is not working, then you can show him that this is the certificate we have received. This product is not certified as IP. You have used it underwater, hence this has failed. And if your product is IP rated and manufacturing fault is there, so in IP they have this gasketing. If gasketing is not proper or the molding is not proper, then the seepage of water happens. And if the seepage of water happens, then the product fails. These failures you can detect, and you can take the product back and modify your equipment or the assembly accordingly to keep the certificate in place. This is the IEC document which I showed earlier. So are we good here? Any other doubts we have, or do you want me to highlight any of other sections in the product development phase or standard phase or testing or certification? Certification is done by the relative authority. Once you have developed your product, you have to drop down a mail to that particular certification authority, pay the fees, and do the testing in their particular lab. You can't do it at your lab and say that, okay, this is compliant. You have to do the testing at their end. What is constituents in this particular case? Praveen sir, you have asked the question, is there any constituents available in India? What is constituents?
No, it is consultants.
Okay, consultants. Okay, I didn't read it properly. Yes, many consultants are available in India for the standards, and many organizations they work just for the standards. They take your product, they ask you what is your geographical location where you want to sell your product. There, then according to it, they refer you the standards, and once you know these are the standards and these are the tests going to be carried out on your product, you give them your product or the pilot production products, 10 or 20 products. They take it, they do the testing internally first so that they don't have to pay that huge amount of money to the issuing authority just for the testing. And once you are fine with the testing, you have done the testing, you are satisfied, you go to the certification authority, pay the fees there, and get your testing done through that particular consultant. So they know about various standards which are applicable for that particular product. It's just like various agents and attorneys available for patents. It's just the same. Various organizations are available for standards. Okay, so I guess we are up here. We no longer have any doubts. So I express my heartiest thanks to Praveen sir for inviting me for such a wonderful uh, event and speech. I appreciate Shigaon College of Engineering, who always takes such events and who is very active. The college is very active in such events. They organize such events very frequently. I see them. I also learn from them. Last time I visited Shigaon, that time also they had organized a very good event, very much informative. Thank you, Praveen sir. Thank you all.
Dear, dear participants, if you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question. I have given a right to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself and you can ask the question if you have. Okay, I think most of the doubts clear by the today's expert. So, from the organizers of this faculty development program, I am the faculty FDP coordinator. Would like to thank Mr. Pratik Baheti for delivering such a nice session on IoT product testing and certifications. So he gave different types of certification and testing that as a product developer we have to do. And he also given us what are the different documentation that we have to do when we go for the certifications. I, from the Sri Sant Gajanan Maharaj College of Engineering, would like to express very much thanks to our today's expert. So with this, I would like to end this session.